Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to our May Forum. First, I want to thank our sponsors who, through their contributions to City Club, helped make all of this possible. Especially, I'd like to acknowledge one of our new members, Interim Healthcare of the Five Valleys, Tom Winter. Tom, if you'd stand up. He's in here someplace, or he was. Next, we want to thank the members of City Club, and you members are the ones who pay a small annual due, and again, you help make this possible. And City Club forums are open to everyone. You don't have to be a member. You know, if you're here, we encourage you to go out and bring your friends to the next one. Matter of fact, everyone here, just for the next forum we have, let's try to bring one extra person with you and try to make these programs as large as possible. We're always looking for new members, and so if you go to cityclubmissoula.com, you can sign up, become a member. You'll be on our mailing list. You'll get a discount in your lunch tickets, and would love the support that you'd give us. We also want to thank Missoula Community Access Television, MCAT. They're the ones who faithfully show up every program. They film each of these, and if there's something that's said or mentioned, or if you miss one and you want to see what was said, you can go to the MCAT website and you can see a replay of those programs. Our format here is very simple. We will introduce our speakers, and then they will each give presentations. When we're done, the great thing about City Club, instead of just firing off questions, each one of you table will sit and take about 5 to 10 minutes, discuss the forum, discuss what happened, and then each table will come up with one question. And then you select one person at the table to stand up and ask that question. Brandon over here will be our microphone fellow today, and he'll go around table to table and you can ask your question. If we have enough time, we can do a second round of questions. Susan, hey Patrick, where are you? Why don't you stand up and talk about the next programs for the next few months?
Okay. So next month at our June forum, we have Emily Bentley, Director of Fairgrounds Development, and the topic is the Missoula Fairground Master Plan, Bringing the Vision to Life. We have, I don't know what our program is in July because I've forgotten it, but in either August or September, we're pretty sure that we're going to have Senator and former Ambassador and former Senator Max Baucus and his wife Melody with us for sort of a welcome back Max, welcome back to Montana event sponsored by City Club. Other upcoming topics include suicide prevention. You know, Montana remains number 1 or number 2 in the nation for suicide. We have a lot of prevention and building of resilience efforts going on that we'd like to tell you about. Zero Waste Missoula, the resolution to get Missoula to zero waste by 2020 is another topic. In December, we're going to hear from the folks at Soft Landing and with some of the recently resettled refugees in Missoula, and also have a performance by I think it's the Sky Blues from Big Sky High School singing some Christmas carols. So we have a lot coming up. Please follow us on Facebook or go to our website, which is cityclubmissoula.com, to keep updated about our programs. And thanks for being here.
Thank you. Today we have our program as the 2017 Montana Legislative Session, featuring House Majority Whip Brad Tschida and House Minority Whip Nate McConnell. A little background on both of them. It was interesting doing research on these gentlemen. Nate is serving his second term as a Democratic representative for House District 89. This is an exceptionally large district. It's a lot of miles to cover. It goes from the area east of Lolo, extending all the way north to Bonner, east to Clinton, and all the way south to the Missoula-Ravalli County line. Nate's a Missoula attorney at Nate McConnell Law Offices. Nate received his law degree at Southern Illinois University and his master's degree from the University of Montana. I looked at Nate's list of activities he's involved in, and I don't know how you have enough hours in the day to do everything. It's endless. Member of the Missoula County Board of Adjustment, Missoula. He's a member of the Missoula Ultimate Frisbee team. Former member of Missoula Urban Demonstration Project, former board member of New Leaders Council, member of Montana Trout Unlimited, Clark Fork Coalition, Backcountry's Hunters anglers, so he's a busy boy. Brad, I've known Brad for many years. Brad Tschida is serving his second term also, as he's a Republican representative for House District 97, an equally large district. It's the area west of Missoula to the Mineral County line, all the way north to Alberton. Brad's a graduate of the University of Montana, his former educator, a coach, now a senior advisor for Milky Way Corporation, which is a wholesale dairy ingredients company. In the research I did, I discovered that Brad was considered an ace pitcher for the American Legion baseball team, a star basketball player for Loyola Sacred Heart High School in the 1970s. We're honored to have both of these gentlemen here today, and I'm just going to say, Brad, if you'd like to start off. Oh, before we get going, lost and found, the last session someone left sunglasses behind. If anyone lost sunglasses, let me know. Brad, you start off, and then we'll go with Nate.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's still morning according to my watch. I've got about 5 minutes to 12, and I'll wrap up by saying good afternoon when we get done here. As Jim said, my name is Brad Tschida. I'm not a Montana native. I have grandchildren who are seventh generation Montanans, so they pull rank on me frequently. Moved here in 1963 when I was 9 years old. I had the good fortune of growing up in Montana. I consider this home. Have always loved this place just because of what it offers you. When you walk out your door in the morning and you get to look at the peaks around you and realize how blessed we are to have the environment in which we live, it's just phenomenal. As Jim mentioned, I'm in my second term, and actually the session wrapped up the end of April, 28th of April. But during the interim, there are committees that a number of folks serve on. And I may be, once again, serving on the Legislative Finance Committee. Those positions I don't think have been finalized yet, but it's one that I served on last time, and I imagine that that's a possibility again for me this year. And I want to thank City Club for having us here. And this is the second round for Representative McConnell and myself, and we had a fun time the last time, and I expect this to be equally enjoyable. Overview of the session. I labeled it the good, the bad, and the ugly because I'm a Clint Eastwood fan. So. And Hang 'em High just didn't seem like the right choice. But just to give you a little background, we started this session with a $200 million plus or minus hole that we had to dig out of. That came from a number of different reasons. One of which was that we had an economic downturn in the oil patch. We knew that as oil goes, so goes the revenues of the state of Montana. So we were down there, but we also didn't respond as a state as quickly as we could have to some of the economic issues that occurred. When we got to Helena in December, we knew that there was a significant problem. And we were then tasked, the legislature was tasked to crawl out of a pretty significant hole. The legislature, contrary to what you may see in print or hear, is the party responsible, and this would be the House of Representatives, responsible for creating a balanced budget. That is the only thing that the legislature is tasked with doing. We don't have any other bills to pass aside from House Bill 2. If we went in and passed that and left on day 2, we would be done. But there's a number of other things that need to be addressed. But as you're forming questions today, I would ask you, one of the things I would like to discuss a bit as we conclude is, what are the principal responsibilities of state government? What are the core responsibilities of state government? And I think we're going to have a lot of varied responses. I have my own beliefs on that. But I'd like to hear from the folks who are here what those responsibilities of state government are. One of the things that we have to bear in mind, 40% of our budget, we have a $10.3 billion biennial budget in Montana. That's in the 2019 biennium, which begins July 1 of this year. In the 2017 biennium, our budget was about $10.2 billion, a little bit less, between 10.1 and 10.2. So 40% of that, about $4 billion, comes from the federal government. So we receive money from other states that pay in more than they get back. So we get more back in the state of Montana than we pay in. And that's a critical kind of issue that needs to be addressed. And I'll point to an example later on when I clarify that. In all my contacts walking around the last 2 sessions in my campaign, I didn't have anybody who said, I'm not paying enough in taxes. I want tax increases. And so one of my goals, one of my vows is that I would not vote for tax increases in Montana unless there was an offset, an expenditure reduction. And I think I honored that commitment to the legislature. The goals of the Republican Party in 2017 are varied, but I think they are significant. Number one, property tax relief. We wanted to make sure that there was something done to reduce the burden on property tax owners. And I'll give you an example. In Whitefish, there's a property up there that somebody owns that's about $1.02 million. It has a family home on it. Family's been in it for 40 years. The house on the property is worth less than $100,000. In 2006, their property taxes were $1,600. In 2015, their property taxes were $8,451. So that's a 400+% increase in their property taxes without changing anything. Yes, it has to do with where they're at. This is a family that does not want to sell their property. They raise their family there, they want to live there, they want their grandkids to come. And I think it's important that we find ways to remediate the property tax issues we have in the state of Montana. One of the other goals of the Republican Party in this session was to strengthen the economy of Montana. Government doesn't strengthen the economy by anything that it does. It strengthens the economy by what it doesn't do, and that is it doesn't increase taxes, it doesn't overregulate. We wanted to protect individual rights, we wanted to protect individual freedoms. We wanted to ensure that access to public lands was available. And in 2015, we had an amendment to a bill that would have prevented the state from selling any public lands. And that, unfortunately, was defeated. We also wanted to make sure that we supported essential infrastructure projects. And I'm going to touch on something here in a moment about infrastructure that sometimes, at least from my perspective, may not be addressed as thoroughly or as accurately as it should be. We also want to put students and parents first, and one of the things we looked at was a public charter school bill. Now, all charter schools are public schools. They just don't have union control, nor do they have a school board similar to what the public schools have. We supported a bill that unfortunately was changed dramatically at the end of the session and did not pass through because the sponsor, Jonathan Windyboy, a Democrat, said the bill isn't what I had envisioned. So to a couple of things here, and then I'm going to turn over to Representative McConnell because I told him I'd speak long enough so he could finish his lunch. And I see he's pushed it forward, so apparently he's done now. But a couple of things I want to talk about. I mentioned bonding or infrastructure. The state of Montana in the 2019 legislature, in the 2019 biennium, will spend over $1 billion on infrastructure. I went to the Montana Infrastructure Coalition executive director and asked them, what constitutes infrastructure? And the 4 key things that they mentioned were highways, bridges, water, and sewer systems. So we have over $1 billion that's going to that. About $900 million that is going to roads and bridges, and about $173 million that will go to water and sewer projects. You've heard talk about a bonding bill or an infrastructure bill that was not passed late in the session. There were 2 bills, House Bill 645 and Senate Bill 367. Both of them would have included 4 buildings, Romney Hall and Bozeman, a technology building at MSU Billings, a dental building at University of Great Falls, and the Southwest Veterans Center in Butte. That was $45 million out of about an $80 million bill. So it constituted more than half of that bill. We would have bonded $80 million, which we would have had to have paid back, plus another $37 million in interest. So $117 million worth of bonding that would have been passed. But that was not for infrastructure. $19.5 million of that would have gone to water and sewer projects. Another $15 million would have gone to schools. And there was recently a letter, or an editorial in the Missoulian that talked about how I, as a Republican, voted against that. Yes, I did. And I say unashamedly I voted against it. because those 4 buildings could have been financed under a program called the Long Range Building Project, or Long Range Building Program, which is designed to build buildings like that. It wasn't meant to be, or the bonding bill was not the right vehicle to use for that purpose. So we're spending over $1 billion. We didn't pass that bill. But in exchange for not passing that bill, the governor requested, and I'll leave it at that, that a bill be defeated on the House floor, and that was House Bill 8. For the last 12 sessions, the last 24 years, House Bill 8 has been passed. That amounted to either $45.7 or $47.5 million worth of water and sewer projects where municipalities and counties can go to the state and borrow money and then pay it back. It's called the Renewable Rural Grant and Loan Program. Those monies were available had we had 67 people vote for it. We had 78 vote for it on second reading. It passed 78 to 22. It died 52 to 48 on third reading. So if you hear that that infrastructure was not passed and they revert back to either House Bill 645 or Senate Bill 367, I question the validity of using the term infrastructure on that particular bill. A couple of the other things that I think are worth noting. We have a gas tax now that is going to incrementally increase to 6 cents per gallon. And there were a number of folks who supported that, mostly people in the construction industry who are going to benefit from that. But the reality was that for about 2 to 2.5 cents worth of gas tax, we could have accomplished the same thing that the 6-cent gas tax is going to accomplish, because it is the monies that we're raising with that extra 2.5 to 4 cents is in excess of what is needed, because we have an increase in fees on titling and registering vehicles and on several other areas that would have compensated for that difference. So to raise the tax as much as it was raised, to me, was excessive and needless, and we had other ways that we could have funded things. I mentioned property tax relief. That's one of the things we need to look at, because right now, and I don't know what the exact percentages are, so I'm not going to really cite any, but I would say slightly over half of the people in the state of Montana own property. The others do not. But everybody's voting on property tax increases, and as a property tax owner, we are subjected to what the majority of the people ask us to do with our property taxes. And as I illustrated in the example up in Whitefish, which is excessive, but it's happening in farm and ranch properties in eastern Montana as well, we've got a problem with the amount of taxes that are being levied. $500 million in taxes are going to be levied in a 3-year period in Missoula, which to me is pretty excessive. But I have a solution for those who we heard in the legislature that said, you know, I talk to people who say they're not paying enough in taxes. Well, I'm going to, if I'm fortunate enough to be reelected, and I haven't made a determination to run or not, I'm going to propose a bill, and the short title of it is the I Don't Pay Enough in Taxes bill. And what it will do is allow anybody who is not paying what they feel is a commensurate amount of taxes to write a check to the state of Montana in an amount that they choose. And then that can be used to help defray the cost for programs that we are in the process of trying to fund. One of the other things that we talked about this go-round was the mail ballot, and that's a fairly hot topic. My first question was, why was the special election set for May 25th? That's right before the Memorial Day weekend. We had adequate time that we could have had that special election happen on June 6th, which is more typical or traditional. We also heard that there was a $750,000 price tag on that. Well, it started out at about $300,000, and then it went to $400,000, and then it went to $500,000, and then went to $750,000. But there are a number of factors that are moving pieces in that. One of which is individuals who are submitting their ballots or requests for ballots are basically putting the postage on a lot of that information that's going back and forth with the county elections offices. So there was a transfer or a distribution of some of those dollars to the private sector, to the people who are mailing those in. So I had an issue with it for a number of reasons. Number one, there are people who like to go to ballot boxes and vote. To force them to do something that was different is, I believe, unfair to those individuals. There was a question raised among the Native population, many of whom don't have ready access to post office boxes and mailboxes. There's also an error with the Billings school bond where mail pieces whose last names began A through D were not disseminated. And then just recently I read of a postal worker who was busted for dumping 3,000 pieces of mail. Not that that's going to happen here, but there are opportunities for that to take place. And then the final thing I want to mention, and then I'll turn it over to Representative McConnell, health insurance. This to me is something that's a lurking behemoth that we need to address. Right now, through 2017, we're paying about $4.6 million in administrative costs for Medicaid expansion. In 2018 and 2019, the federal share begins to decrease. And without putting anyone on the spot or asking a question, I will tell you what the amounts are. And these are the minimums that the state is going to have to come up with in 2018 and 2019, according to Quinn Holzer, who is one of the chief, I believe the chief of the Legislative Fiscal Division of the state of Montana. And again, he told me these are minimums. In 2018, the state is going to have to come up with $32 million in additional expenses to cover Medicaid expansion. And that's a minimum. And in 2019, a minimum of $38 million. So we're facing a $70 million hit to our budget without doing anything different. So we need to really stop and take a look at what's coming down the train track at us right now. Yes, there could be some increases in revenue. We could be able to handle that, but we have to be judicious about the dollars that we're spending, and we need to prioritize where those dollars go. In closing, I'm going to say that if every representative I had a chance to work with in Helena or alongside in Helena were as good a person as Representative Nate McConnell is, it would be a tremendous experience there. Because you got a man who, I believe, even though we see things different ideologically, is someone who's approachable, who will listen to what you have to say, and may not agree with you, but will hear your side of the story and offer his viewpoints in a way that helps you learn and understand. And today I was talking with my boss about things that we differ on, and oftentimes we fail or neglect to honor the other side of the divide in terms of how we see things or how we address things. And that's one of the things I can say about Representative McConnell. He's always open to hearing what you have to say, and he's not going to pigeonhole you ideologically. He's going to give you the benefit of listening to and hearing out what you have to say. So I thank you again for allowing us to come here today and speak to the group, and I look forward to the questions at the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've been in front of a group of people holding a microphone, and when I was putting my suit on this morning, I had a little PTSD from remembering the session. So thanks a lot for inviting me, Jim. It's supposed to get a bigger laugh than that. Come on, you guys. We got the post-lunch digestive process going. I do want to thank you for inviting me. I want to thank Brad for those kind words. Flattery will get you everywhere, so I appreciate that very much. When I was thinking about the session and what happened, a lot of times when you're done with the session and things don't end up exactly where you want them to be or where you thought they would be, you get a little skewed in your view, and you sort of focus on the last thing that happened. And the last thing that happened, obviously, was disagreement over infrastructure and some of the stuff that happened there. But what I wanted to do is present you guys with what we did get done. And there was a working majority in the legislature this session. And I was very comforted to see former Senator Bob Brown's article in the Missoulian the other day about the last time in '93 when the gas tax was raised. Again, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's a very good opinion piece. It really hit home with me because it shows that we're not alone. The people who want to get things done for our state are not alone. The people who think that progress can be made through compromise and through negotiation, it still can be done. Some of the things we did get done, we expanded the pilot program for pre-K. That was a success. We didn't get it for everybody, but it was a tight budget year. As Representative Tschida said, it wasn't easy to find money to fund things we thought were important. We did a tremendous job with criminal justice reform. We think that the suite of bills that Senator Cynthia Wolkin, Representative Kim Dudek, Senator Diane Sands, and myself, we put together a package that is going to save taxpayers money in the long run. We went from tough on crime to smart on crime, and I think you're going to see a lot of progress there. That was a true example of bipartisan work. Representative Randy Brodell from up in Kalispell helped shepherd that through, and I'm eternally grateful to him for all his help and support. We passed one of, I'm not the biggest fan of President Reagan, but we passed one of his real, I think, contributions, and that is the Earned Income Tax Credit passed. Well, I think Representative Rob Cook from Conrad, when he was bringing the bill on the floor, stood up and read from the book of Reagan, and it was hilarious. If you guys have any free time, you should go check it out, because it rewards work at the end of the day. And when you reward work, you get people buying in, you get honest tax-paying citizens. It's a tremendous incentive, and I'm proud that we got that passed. We did employment apprenticeship program that allows employers to get a tax break for training and helping educate the workforce. I know that we have a very intelligent workforce here in our state. If you ask employers what they need, most of the time what you're going to hear is a qualified employee. I need somebody who can come here and do the job. And this apprenticeship program is going to go a long way. I think it's going to start small and get bigger, because I think employers are going to take advantage of it. It's an important program, and I'm happy that it passed. Here's something that I got a chance to work on over the interim that was, it doesn't hit Missoula as hard as it hit places like Butte or other rural places, but we passed the air ambulance reform package, and that was Senator Gordy Vance and Representative Ryan Lynch, a Republican and a Democrat, respectively. And I can tell you that when the air ambulance bill essentially takes the patient or the person needing the emergency service out of the middle, because insurance companies were charging an arm and a leg, the helicopters or the fixed-wing aircraft were charging an arm and a leg, and who's stuck with the balanced bill? It's the mom whose kid just had a medical emergency and calls 911, and the doctor gets there, the EMT gets there and says, we got to fly your kid from the High Line down to Great Falls or Missoula or somewhere, and we got to do it now. And the mom is left saying, she's not going to have time to sit there and say, well, how is insurance going to cover this, and I got to go check my policy and all this stuff. She says, when's the airplane going to get here? And the air ambulance reform bills were vital, I think, to helping protect average Montanans when tragedy strikes. And then, of course, my colleague, Representative Shane Morgeau, who I think was pretty unique guy in this way. He's a freshman, and he was elected as a whip. He's right here in Missoula. He had a bill called the Promise Act, which helps kids who are interested in going to college, 2-year programs, and want to get in, need a leg up, they get a little help. It didn't cost the state any money because he's using a grant program, and I've never seen a guy fight so hard for a bill when he hit brick wall after brick wall after brick wall and still saw it through. So we have a lot of successes that I think are going to translate into some bigger things down the road. As Representative Tschida said, this was a tight budget year, and we weren't going to get a lot done in terms of big projects that were going to benefit the entire state. We had to go more small bore this time, but we did get some things done that are helping average Montanans. I think we heard a little bit earlier about bonding and infrastructure. I think that the compromise component, and this is why I'm sort of jaded by the end of the session, the compromise component was there. I mean, there were Republicans and Democrats and the governor working to find a solution to, I think the governor started at $120 million bonding, and then he went down to, or 180, and then it went down to 120, then it went down to 90, and then it went down to 80. He was at the table, and Democrats and Republicans were at the table trying to find a solution. And at the end, it didn't happen. And I think it's unfortunate. I think the state was ready for a bonding bill. I think we had a good compromise in place. But I also think this. At the end of the session, there was a great unasked and unanswered question, and that is, there was an alternative bill that passed the Senate. It was sitting in the Speaker's drawer. All he had to do was take it out of the drawer, hand it to the chief clerk. It goes, the House of Representatives vote on it. That bill was never brought out of the drawer. It was not a bonding bill. It was a bill that was an alternative source of paying for a vet's home, paying for Romney Hall in Bozeman, paying for the Historical Society, and paying for schools who needed a boiler or a roof or other things. And we didn't get to vote on it. And I have yet to hear a journalist ask the question why, or the speaker answer the question why. And I think that's the great untold story at this point. I think we need the answer to that. I think Scott Sales, who's the Republican president of the Senate, allowed the Senate to vote on it. They passed it. We didn't get that chance. And it's disappointing. And it can come across, I was really afraid of coming across as partisan and weird, because that is weird. I mean, you've never seen anything so weird as partisanship. Like my way or the highway stuff. And Representative Tschida is right. You don't get anything done for the people. I feel like our job is to take care of taxpayer money. Our job is to provide some sort of policy that reflects our values, and to, at the end of the day, come home with something that we can say to our constituents, yeah, we either tried and failed or we tried and succeeded, and I'm optimistic about the state of Montana. But it was truly strange, the end of the session, and we never got an answer. We have shovel-ready jobs across the state that just aren't being funded, and that's unfortunate. But I do want to emphasize that we had a good session. I feel very proud to represent the people of House District 89. I like to tell people that House District 89 is the best place to fish because you got the Bitterroot, the Clark Fork, and Rock Creek. So anybody who's from out of my district needs to come and spend money in House District 89. So this is your forum. I'm here to answer questions. I'm very honored and flattered to be here, and I look forward to a good discussion. Thanks, guys.
So what we're going to ask you to do is for the next 5 or 10 minutes, each of the tables, chat about what was discussed today, and each table come up with one question, possibly two, and then select someone at your table to ask that question, and then we'll have the microphone come around. You can ask your questions. It's all yours. All right, well, you're wrapping up. Actually, I'm going to start off with a question for both of these gentlemen. And Brad, let's have you go first. And the question very simply is, when you look at the close of the session, and oftentimes at the close of every legislative session, everyone looks back and says, I wish we would have done that differently. And so the question I pose to both of you gentlemen is, when you look at the close of this year's session, what do you think what's your overall feeling of how it ended, and what's something that you wish would have been done differently on how it closed? Whether it's legislation or just anything that you think you wish would have been done differently.
You know, they say if it's and nuts, ifs and nuts are candy, or ifs and buts are candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. I'm not really sure what I would have done differently. You know, I think we're taking a different route, whether we're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, a libertarian. We're taking a different route to try to get to the same ends. And I think one of the things that we could do a better job of is honoring and understanding the other side of the issue. I think as Representative McConnell mentioned, we had a tight budget. There was really not a great deal of money to be expended. But sometimes we put blinders on and we don't look at, how what we're doing is going to impact what the other side's trying to do. But as far as personally what I would have wanted to do differently, well, there was one piece of legislation that I thought was kind of a no-brainer, and it wasn't, I'm a member of what I refer to affectionately as the Beg, Borrow, and Steal Society. Are there any fellow members in here? Okay, well, I'm going to make you all honorary members. Okay, anytime you hear something that's tremendous, you say, as Nate McConnell once said, and then you follow through with it. And then from that point forward, you can say, as I've always said, and you become the owner of that. I talked to an accountant who was disheartened that a lot of people who have a limited income, a lot of them being college students, when they file their tax returns, if they happen to file late and they're getting a refund, they get dinged $50 by the state of Montana as a late penalty. So if they're going to get $100 back and they're thinking, well, I can afford this book or that book, they're not getting that back. They're getting penalized. And to me, it just doesn't make sense. I still haven't collected it from, but I gave $5 to another representative. And I said, I'm going to get that from you next week, and I still haven't collected it. I don't think he should be entitled to take $3 of that and hold on to it because he carried it around for the last 3 or 4 months. So legislation like that I think makes sense sometimes gets lost in the milieu of what we're doing. But I think, to summarize, I think if we were to sit down and talk frankly, honor one another's positions, and then hear what the other side has to say and come to some sort of consensus, and I mean some true middle ground on what could be done to attain the best result for the people of the state of Montana. I think that's one of the things that's always a regret. I mean, I don't look at the last week of the session because by then there are people who are ready to get out of there, they're done, and they're trying to figure out ways to go home. So the last bill or two really don't reflect what went on throughout the entire session. So I think it's a matter of trying to be a little bit more collaborative and collegial.
And I think Brad is right. There are so many points where we collaborate, we talk, we get a conversation going, and so to answer Jim's question, the great disappointment is after all that, after the compromise, after the negotiation, after the talking like we're human beings to each other, not being able to vote on a bill is disappointing. And if I could go back in time, not that anyone should ever, ever, ever do this, go back in time so I could be in the legislative session again, because that's insane. Don't do that. I wish I could have gone back and made a difference. I mean, in terms of just getting a bill to the floor, and I don't know that's the great disappointment for me, because I truly think that the majority of Montanans wanted some sort of infrastructure bill. I really do. And I think when I read Senator Bob Brown's op-ed, I'm going to harp back on that again. He was right in that most people want to do the right thing, and I think even if you're opposed to it, I hate to pick on him because I like him personally, but Speaker Knudsen opposed the alternative funding for the infrastructure bill, and that is absolutely fine. I'm fine. I disagree with, as Brad said, we disagree a lot, and we're not enemies. He's not my enemy. Anybody who's serving in the state legislature is not an enemy. They are there pretty much on their own dime, because we all know we don't get paid a ton of cash. And you're there to serve. And that has to be honored. And when you have that honor to go and serve, you have the responsibility at the same time to vote. And when you're not allowed to exercise your responsibility, I think there's a problem. And that's, Representative, I'm going to throw him under the bus because I really like him. Representative Hopkins is here, and he was a guy you could also go and talk to. He's on the other side of the aisle. Look, it doesn't matter if we disagree. It matters that our constituents hear our voices through a vote, and it matters that we try to craft something that benefits the state. So my great disappointment is that we weren't able to convince the speaker to open a desk drawer and hand the clerk a bill. And that is part of my responsibility as well. I never went to his office and said, hey, Austin, what's going on? So both Brad and I are learning. This is a learning game, and I look for, I mean, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to be a human being to each other over there. It's super important, and it's actually very refreshing. So,
Thank you. First question.
Well, first of all, this table would like to express our appreciation for your service on behalf of the state. And one question deals with renewable energy. Senate Bill 390, which would have authorized the PACE program, not requiring one nickel of public dollars to be spent by the legislature of the state, but it would have authorized communities or counties to create a district, put an assessment on a property that can be used for energy conservation, putting a fission furnace or renewable energy. 37 states have passed that bill. I think there are several more states in the process. It didn't pass this session. Is that a reflection of policy on renewable energy?
well, thanks for the question, and thanks for the plug for public service. More of you guys should get involved if you're not already. Yeah, it was disappointing to see PACE go down. We had what I thought was a decent solution, and it ended up not getting through. I was lucky enough to serve on the Energy Committee in the House, and so I saw firsthand sort of some of the stuff that happened. There were I think there was a fear of the unknown in a sense with PACE and other renewable energy, like stopping tax credits for people who have already invested in solar panels for their house. I think you can have an argument about whether or not that was a smart policy. I think you can have an argument about where alternative or renewable energy should be in our state. I think PACE was an important part of that. We're not able to have the next step of the conversation. We're still at the question of whether or not wind energy, solar energy, other projects should be part of our energy production. But I was disappointed. I land on, this shouldn't surprise you being a guy who represents the university district, and but I land on the side of I wish that had passed. I think it's a good idea, and I'll let Brad maybe have a different.
Projects like that are important. I think we have to look at all resources, all energy resources. And when I was campaigning in both sessions, I said, I'm not opposed to any type of energy. We have to figure out how it's going to fit into our energy program, our energy portfolio. But what we can't do, and the two things that I said I wouldn't do, I would not vote for something that would raise any particular entity's taxes, and I wouldn't allow the government to pick winners or losers. I think the PACE program has some merit. I think it wasn't a matter of if it's going to pass, it's a matter of when it's going to pass. There's a lot of pieces of legislation that start off as being good ideas. And trust me, I had like a half a dozen that were fantastic ideas. Well, okay, maybe one, but I stole that from somebody. But you get them started, and you get them into committee, and you start talking about them, and all of a sudden you find out you missed some very important things in the process. So I think that there will be another bill coming back, and thank you for the question. There'll be another bill, I'm sure, in the 2019 session that will refine and hone the edge of that, so it's going to be a more appropriate, more targeted, more effective piece of legislation. So I don't think it's not gone or dead by any means, but I think it's a matter of needing some additional refinement, some additional assessment.
I'll let them sit down first. All right, so with a legislative session of only 90 days, that leaves very little time to get through all of these different bills. I think there were a little over 1,000 bills introduced between both houses this time around. And you both talk about all the political gamesmanship that happened toward the end of the session. So our question would be, would a longer legislative session allow for more compromise and time to work through some of these problems? Or what? Or a more regular, like more than every other year?
I think we'd exercise our thumbs a little bit more because we'd be choking one another by the end of it. You know, it's absolutely the case. I mean, 90 days, or actually in this case, 88 days of very concentrated energy. I think I read a quote, and I want to say it was Mark Twain, that said the difference between death and taxes is that death doesn't get worse when the legislature's in session. And 90 days is sometimes too long, sometimes too short, but I think we found that it works. It forces you to be on top of things. One of the things that's a disadvantage, but it's an advantage also, I think you have to look at both sides of it. We don't have staff to work with us. You know, I am my staff. And even though I was a member of the majority team, a majority whip, there was nobody that I could go to say, hey, can you research this for me or do this for me, other than going to the Legislative Services Division to do that work for you. So, you know, we're sitting at night, at least this is my typical day. I start at 7 o'clock in the morning, 5 days a week. And then when you get done with the session, I worked at the Capitol for a couple, 3 hours after the session was done. So then, you know, there might be a dinner of some sort. You go there for a couple minutes, have a piece of rubber chicken, have a soft drink, thank the people for doing it, and go home. And then you were reading bills at night. And thank God not all the bills were the same length as Representative Kerry White's 2 bills. Representative Kerry White had a bill to study sales tax, 414 pages long. And I told him, I mean, jokingly told him, I got through page 35 of it that night after reading all the other bills. And I apologized that I didn't have more questions for him, because I said, if you look at page 35 of my document, there's a big drool stain where I fell asleep right on top of that. But you just don't have time to get through all of them, so you have to rely on other individuals who are experts in those areas. But to answer your question, I don't think it necessarily serves a purpose to go longer than that. There's some conversation about having a session every year, say for 2 to 2.5 months. Say in the even years it would be policy, and in the odd years it would be finance. To go longer just means more dollars being spent, and I don't know how much good is going to be accomplished in that time frame. You know, I think the system works. It may not be the most effective way of working, but it does in fact work pretty well for us, I think so.
I agree. I think every other year, 90 days is sufficient. To be totally honest, I think it's sufficient. I think you got to have your game ready. You got to have a plan. You got to be able to execute it. You got to talk to people. You got to know what your bill says. You got to, you know, I mean, there's a communications process that you have to take part in. But I don't think we need more time to get together and screw stuff up. I think we do that just well enough for 90 days every other year. So.
Next question, please.
So we were talking at our table a little bit about funding mechanisms, and one of the reasons property taxes are so high, particularly in Missoula, is that property taxes are really one of our only funding mechanisms for local projects. So I guess our question is, how do you propose to lower property taxes on a local level without going into some kind of state debt on a more regional or statewide level? Or I guess there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance there in terms of lowering property taxes but still having money to pay for infrastructure projects on a local level.
I'm going to take about 30 seconds to editorialize to address a question that Representative McConnell raised about the bill that didn't come out of the Speaker's desk. One of the reasons why it didn't come out was that the Republicans who went to the governor to negotiate said, here's what we want, and offered a suite of things that we said, in exchange for some of the things that you'll do, we'd like to have your signature on these bills. And we were told no, 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 heck no, and a few other no's. So the second to the last day, some of those compromises were offered. But what was offered was tax increases to pay for those things. Some existing, some new. So I think that was in part my understanding. Now, I'm not the Speaker of the House, don't have any plans to be. He's actually 1 year older to the day than my oldest son, that just scared the heck out of me when I heard that. As far as funding mechanisms for services in the state, you don't have many options, okay? You have sales tax, you have property tax. That's really it. And when you throw the word sales tax out, you get this fear that leaps into people's minds. Well, as I mentioned, I'm a property owner. A lot of you in here are property owners. But people who don't own property vote on measures that extract dollars from our pockets to pay for things. If I could offer a solution to everybody and say, look, I can reduce your property taxes 40% tomorrow, I'm sure I'd get probably a good number of people that say, sign me up for that. Can't be done, because there's a finite amount of dirt. And the only way to increase the revenues you generate is to increase the taxes on those properties. Or if you're going to increase fees, which another, it's a polite term for tax, on vehicle registration or on services. That's how you can raise money. The bill that I mentioned, the 414-page behemoth that Representative Kerry White from the Gallatin offered, which to me was a great bill to enlighten individuals about the need to assess a sales tax, to look at it. I mean, it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and everybody's going, no, just don't talk about that, okay? We have to talk about alternative funding sources. So there is an interim study bill that will look at sales tax and see what would happen. But one of the requirements of Representative White's bill was that if there is a sales tax, there would be no property tax. That would supplant property tax. So that's, you can't have both of them together, in my estimation, because what you're going to have is two tax bases that are going to continue to increase. So as far as finding alternative sources, we have to talk about what's out there and available. I lived in the state of Washington for 9 years. Their sales tax is about 9%. They also have property taxes over there. And here's what I don't want to see happen in Montana. You get people moving in from out of state that may have a high sales tax, may have a high property tax, and or may have a personal income tax. They come to Montana and they go, you guys don't have sales tax and your property tax is very low. This is great, but they're coming in with a wheelbarrow full of money, and they're supplanting people who have spent their whole lives living here and who now may be on a fixed income or a limited income, and they're causing their property values to increase, which means their property taxes are going up. And I don't think it's right. I have people in my district that were in their homes in 2014 when I walked the neighborhood, and in 2016, they were no longer there. And they were people who told me, if property taxes continue to go up, I'll have to move. So it's something we need to consider.
So to be brief, I know other tables have questions. One of the things, that it is true that you're going to have to find, if it's the balloon, there's a finite amount of, if you squeeze one place, the air is going to go somewhere else and the pressure is going to be somewhere else. I think the one thing we haven't talked about is tax equity. I think the people at the top have a bigger responsibility. I think there was a bill to tax out-of-state offshore corporations at a little bit higher rate. That didn't pass. I think those are, we talk about alternatives, it's not just either or in those things. Our blinders are on a little bit because of the intense pressure on people in Missoula County for the property taxes, and it is a serious thing, and we should address it. But you address that partly with county, city, those sorts of things. And then you also, you got to explore what the heck's going on in the state and where we're getting our money. And we haven't done a good job of that. So I would just put that out there as one of the things. If you're going to open your eyes to, I didn't get to page 35 of Kerry's bill. There's no way, man. Aren't enough trees in the forest for me to invest in something like that. But yeah, the sales taxes, you do have to honestly assess, is this right for the state? I mean, Brad's right. We do have to consider alternative sources. But we also have to be, I think, a little bit more fair in our system. So,
Does anybody else have any questions?
Any others?
Okay, we got one over here.
We had a number of issues, but I'll just ask, since we're in Missoula, home of the University of Montana, main campus, we'd like to know if you felt that you and the session truly served the University of Montana and its future.
as a representative of physically the University of Montana, the answer to that question is no. We did not do enough. I just mentioned tax equity. I just saw in the paper tuition's going to go up for the average student. There's an old saying, don't tell me your priorities, don't tell me your values, show me your budget. Our budget didn't reflect our values, at least from where I sit. We're not making it easier for kids to go to college. We're not making it easier for them to go to trade schools, Missoula College. We're not doing our job in reflecting what we think our state should be. When I went to college, I paid $900 a semester, and I got Pell Grants, I got other forms of help. Tuitions were low because states invested, and we're not investing. We're choosing different routes to take in terms of where we get our money, how we spend our money, those sorts of things, and we're not valuing education. Pat Williams the other day, a couple weeks ago, who's a political hero of mine and a heck of a good guy, and I'm going to yell at him for not being here, it said, the United States of America succeeds when you invest in education and you allow the workers to bargain collectively. I agree with that. I think we need more investment in our university. You see the slash and burn that's going on over there, and it's hard to see. But they've got a budget reality that has to be dealt with. And we just didn't invest, and that hurts us as a state. So those are my feelings. And also, go Grizz.
Well, having a law degree from Southern Illinois, home of the Salukis, which are guard dogs for Egyptians. Yeah, there you go. The legislature gives the MUS, the Montana University System, a sum of money and says, do with it what you choose. And the Board of Regents decides what happens to those dollars. Do I think we could put more money in? Yes, but my question then is, and I asked this in our committee, I was a chair of a subcommittee of appropriations, the General Government Subcommittee, and everybody that came in to a department said, don't cut my department, it's too valuable. So after the second party that said that, I said, all folks who are testifying going forward, you tell me where the dollar's going to come from that's got to be cut. And it wasn't cuts to budgets, it was cuts to increases. Now the university saw some decrease, or MUS saw some decrease in their funding. But if you look at the University of Montana enrollment, it is down significantly. And there needs to be some assessment by the Board of Regents how they spend their money. I'll disagree respectfully with Representative McConnell that I think that we give money, we can't afford to just carte blanche give money and take the Board of Regents off the hook. They have a job to do. They need to determine where those dollars are best spent. And if they come to us and say, here's our plan of action, here's what we're going to do, they stand a better chance of having the funding that they're looking for provided to them. So I'm not going to take all the weight for that. I'll take some of it, but I'll put it on the Board of Regents because I think it's best when that yoke is borne by all the parties who are involved. So.
One last quick question and quick responses.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the first time you gentlemen were here, before the session. And during that discussion, early education was brought up. And there was a statement made that they hadn't seen evidence of studies that had been done that showed early education was valuable. We're still one of, 5 states that doesn't have an early education program. I sent you articles that showed the research. and why it is successful. And so I'd like to ask both of you if your views have changed and what you're going to do to make us not one of those 5 states.
I'm not surprised by the question. I did get the information, and I did read it. Were my views changed? Yes, but not sufficiently to fund pre-K as a, and I'm going to say as a requirement for all 4- and 5-year-olds. I think that there's a place for it. We did pass some money for some public, or excuse me, for some private pre-K to find out if it's going to work. But we have, I think, a similar number of examples of how it's not working vis-a-vis programs like Head Start, as opposed to the ones that you sent me, the programs that are working. Yes, there are successes, but we have to find a model that's going to work for specific areas, not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. And I think that's part of the issue. We've got to have programs that fit the population base and the people of the state of Montana. There's work to be done. We're not, like we were talking about earlier about a question regarding, is a bill dead? It's never dead. So there's going to be some additional work done on early education.
I also got the information. I don't think we were far apart in terms of what needed to happen, Russ. But you know, the governor brought in the education minister for, definitely not named minister. It's the state of Alabama, the director of their education program, and she was a very nice woman, very rock rib Republican, and very pro early education. And I think when that's one of those things that Brad's right, that crosses partisan boundaries. I think you will see at the end of Governor Bullock's second term, you're going to see a pre-K bill that hopefully will be in better financial times and will get something passed. But this is an issue that I care deeply about, and I think we're going to get something done.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you. And also just, I have a lot of respect for both of you gentlemen. You know, oftentimes we hear about the acrimony that happens in politics and how people can't get along. And I just think it's really noble that you two gentlemen, you can disagree with each other, but still work with each other as colleagues. And I applaud both of you for that. Thank you for coming. Again, go to Missoula or cityclubmissoula.com. You can see our coming programs, and remember to sign up early, and please become a member. Thank you very much.